Hey guys, it's Tuesday.
And you know what that means.
Another episode of True Crime and Chill.
Season 2, finale style.
Okay, chillers, before we get into this first part of our Season 2 finale, I need to say holy crap, because I never thought that we would actually have a Season 1, let alone a Season 2. So doing this has been so eye-opening, and honestly, it has had myself and us meet really amazing people who have gone through some of the most heartbreaking things, and I'm just happy that we are honestly able to get their stories out, talk to them, kind of just get the information out there for everybody to hear, so that way it's there.
I've met some really cool people, and I love. This is fun. It's a great outlet for me to be into my true crime stuff, and then I do media stuff, so editing the website, and it's fun for me. I'm weird, I guess, but
It is a little bit weird.
Yeah. Well, it's so I have my own business. I'm a digital marketer. Anybody who doesn't know. And just the last couple of days, I'm like, oh yeah, well, you just have to, if you're running a Facebook or a LinkedIn ad, or you're running a Google ad, it's blah, 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 blah. And I get the deer in the headlights, and they're like, ew, I don't understand any of that. And I'm like, really? I nerd out about this stuff. Like, oh, I love it. So, but then it's the same thing with true crime. Like you and I were like true crime fans, right?
It is terrible. It's terrible though. It really is.
Right. But then there's my fiance who, he doesn't understand why I like it so much.
Yeah.
So
he becomes official.
Just like we've learned, we're not everybody's cup of tea, right?
Yeah.
Like there are people who don't like us, and that's fine. I don't want to be like everybody else. If we were like everybody else, then how would we be standing out from everybody else?
That would be boring.
Right. So anyway, after this, we do plan to take about a month-long hiatus just to regroup, because editing a podcast every week
gets tiring,
especially when you're trying to run a business.
But we will still be engaging with everybody. We will still be talking with everybody. We will be back we'll be back the first week of August with our Supernatural episode, kicking it off. So, I mean, we will be back. It's not like we're just being like, oh, peace out, Cub Scouts and stuff. Like, bye and everything. And if you follow us on TikTok, which we'll put on our website, and I'll put on our Facebook page and stuff like that, then I will also be a little bit more active on there with the videos as well, since it's a little bit easier to do 60-second snippets than an hour-long episode and stuff. So, okay, but as always, we have disclaimers before this episode. However, it's not really going to be a jokey type of one that we normally do. This topic, I've been wanting to do this topic for a while. You can ask Amber how long I've been wanting to talk about this since actually the season started, and I figure out that our finale would be the perfect time. We're not law enforcement. We're not coroners. We're not detectives. We're not CID. We're not FBI. Or anything of that sort. We are just two women who want to bring very important stories to the forefront. And this week and next week's stories need to be told. Okay. It's also stuff that's very near and dear to my heart, as it has also affected me personally as well as a former military member. It will be about 4 women who have been taken from us way too soon, and the cover-ups that were put into place to try and hide their murders. This week and next week, we will be talking about murder in the military and the 4 families that forever changed. Okay, so if you've been living under a rock, then a lot of these cases you will not know. However, the first case we're going to look into is in this episode, and we're going to talk about 2 girls this week, 2 girls next week, which Amber will be hosting. But the first case of this episode is going to be the case of 19-year-old LaVena Johnson. Now, LaVena was born July 27th, 1985. She was the 4th child with 3 older brothers. And so she was the first girl. So, I mean, as somebody who has 2 boys, I could probably imagine the excitement from her mom when her first baby girl came along. She looked up to her brothers. She thought that they were the greatest and everything. And then she also had a younger sister that came 2 years after LaVena was born that she just doted on. She's a very bright, ambitious girl. She loves singing in her church choir. She loved Jesus. She loved basically having that that huge thing in her life. She was always the one that was saying, come on, let's go to church on Sundays. She was helping out the youth group on Wednesdays. She was singing in her choirs. Like, her mom said that she was very active in her church. And that she was just very, like, ambitious. Her parents always talked about how she basically just loved being in the environment. She was very smart in school. She ran track as well as other sports throughout middle school and high school. And funny enough, she didn't do track because she wanted to like do a sport. She did track just because she wanted to run. She liked running. And she was like, oh, hey, I could totally run with this. So, like, she just did track because, let me tell you, somebody who hates running, that's pretty impressive. Like, so she was the one that, she also was one that wanted to join the military at a very young age. So her father was actually a veteran. And though they had the money to pay for LaVena to go to college, she really just kind of wanted to carry on the family tradition and enlist and kind of just like support herself in college and everything, which was understandable because, you know, you get free college when you do 4 years of military. So, I mean, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good trade-off. So in 2004, she graduated high school. She later graduated basic training and AIT before moving to her first duty station at Fort Campbell, Tennessee, which was actually here where I'm at. She ended up deploying right away to Balad, Iraq. This was in the time, like, this was back in 2005, so deployments were very rapid, very often. Whereas now, depending on what your job is, I never deployed my entire time in, just because of where I was stationed, which was Hawaii. You never deployed unless you were infantry. So it was very, it wasn't unusual to see her deploy right away. So she had really only been in Balad for 8 weeks when she was murdered.
And it was her first deployment,
yes,
correct?
It was her very first deployment. I think that she actually was in Fort Campbell for like maybe only a month or two before her unit shipped out. Maybe a little bit longer, but she definitely was not there long at all.
That's intense, though.
Yeah, so 8 weeks in Iraq, and she was in a place where she honestly should have been really safe, quite frankly. So LaVena worked with the communications tent. With the communications tent, when you're deployed, just a little quick thing for people who don't know, when you're deployed back then, there was a tent that was the communications tent. You could FaceTime family members and stuff. Like, you could because I know they had a type of Skype where you could video chat and stuff. You could call family members on the phone, stuff like that, and just so that way you can keep in contact with them. So because she worked in the communications tent, she was able to really talk with her family a lot. And I mean, she talked with them a lot. She wrote letters to them as well, just kind of explaining things that were happening over there, the conditions of the weather, what her surroundings were like, saying happy birthday, any holidays that she had missed, birthdays, like I said, stuff like that. She really kind of talked with them about some of the serious stuff, but she tried to keep it lighthearted as to not worry her parents. But she did tell them how some of the NCOs would treat the women and how it was very concerning. However, like I said, she always tried to make sure, it was very lighthearted. Yeah, this happened, but it's whatever. I don't want to, she didn't want to worry them, which was okay. One issue that kind of stood out to her dad was that on July 14th, LaVena had told her dad about a run-in she had with a general. She was actually closing up the communications tent one night. None of the soldiers were leaving. They were kind of just really ignoring her and just kind of continuing to do what they wanted to do and stuff in there. And she's trying to tell them, hey, look, you guys need to go. I need to close my tent up. We need to get this on the road, stuff like this. And she ended up having to call in someone higher up. And she figured, the sergeant was going to come in and tell them, because she was a PFC. She wasn't anything big. She wasn't a sergeant. She wasn't an NCO. So she thought she was going to get a sergeant that was going to come in and tell the other soldiers, hey, y'all need to leave. Y'all need to listen to her and stuff. Instead, she got a general that came in and told the guys to leave. And instead of getting on the guys for not listening to LaVena, he looked at LaVena and basically told her, you're too quiet. That's why nobody wants to listen to you. So he starts scolding her for asking for help when this wasn't her fault. Yeah, that was something I looked at. I was like, it happens so much in the military, especially with women. Especially with women. Oh, you're not.
It's not just in the military. Let's be honest here. This is not just a military issue, but this is the focus. So,
Yeah.
yes, no, I
But
agree.
like it happens so much and everything, and it is really sad to kind of read. But like her dad obviously was not happy. Like he's a veteran, he knows. He's like, this isn't normal. That's not how you were supposed to handle things. Like he wanted her to basically go to her command and request a battle buddy. So for those of you who aren't familiar with military terms, battle buddies are basically there as your backup. Basic training, you're assigned a battle buddy essentially, and that you guys do everything together. You go to the bathroom together, you sleep together, you sleep next to each other, you help each other out. Like if one of you has got to go to sick call, the other person goes with. Like they're basically there to be your backup and your eyes and ears doing just about anything. And so he was like, you need to go get a battle buddy, you need to go get backup, you need to go make sure that this doesn't happen again. And LaVena was like, no, I don't want to rock the boat. Like I don't want to just go in there and start demanding things, which again is an understandable thing, because as a lower ranking soldier, it's very hard to try and stand up to yourself to higher ranking officials,
I
especially.
understand that. And I think I actually believe a battle buddy could have done her some good, to be honest.
Yes and no. Because we don't really know the full atmosphere over there. We don't know if we don't know if she had friends over there. We don't know if she didn't have friends over there. Like I said, the military has been very tight-lipped about her case. Like this happened in 2005. It's still 2020, and they're still saying it's a suicide. But we're going to get to that. So,
2021.
Oh my gosh, it is 2021. My brain keeps. But
it feels like 2020.2.
Right. So she just didn't want to rock the boat, and her dad understood it. So he was basically going to try and let her do it on her own before he got involved. And
well, yeah, so that's the way it should be done.
He wanted to be her dad, and he wanted to help her, but he understood that she needed to do it on her own.
Yep.
So about 3 days later, on July 17th, LaVena called back and told her family that good news, she's probably coming home early, which was a rare thing back then. Her dad obviously was worried because it's like, well, why are you coming home so early? But her parents weren't really going to question it too much because they were going to get her back early. She was so excited about it. She was like, I'm going to be home in time for Christmas. Don't decorate that Christmas tree without me. Like, cause like back in 2005, these were when deployments were like a year or 2 years long. So this really, so like now they're like 9-month rotations depending on where you are. So she's like, don't decorate the Christmas tree without me. Like, I'm so excited for this. She was in really good spirits. She was happy to see her family again and everything. And she chatting her mom up and stuff. And unfortunately, a few days later on July 19th, a notification team showed up at LaVena's parents' house and informed them that their daughter had passed away.
And did they say why?
So they were super tight-lipped at first. The soldier that had shown up, so notification team is, again, for people who don't know what that is, when a soldier passes away within 8 hours of their passing, a team will show up, like one to two people will show up at the soldier's family's house and inform the next kin. And so soldier was really tight-lipped about it. He really wasn't saying anything. They were trying to like get like answers because it's like she was in a place where she was supposed to be safe. The lad at the time wasn't very combative. Like she really wasn't supposed to be like anywhere like outside of it and everything. She really wasn't supposed to be in any danger. They basically were just being really tight-lipped on the whole situation. Like, oh, well, dancing around the subject. Well, the soldier ended up like saying things that really made her dad go, hold on. Do you think my daughter committed suicide? And the soldier was like, well, no, but I mean, kind of like he stumbled. Like LaVena's dad said, he started stumbling over his words. He started like kind of like avoiding the subject. It went back to, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're getting her body shipped back here. It's got to go get prepped and all this other stuff. There's an autopsy, all this other stuff or whatever. So like her parents are sitting there going, why did he just say like she possibly killed herself when just 2 days prior she was in great spirits? Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that somebody could be absolutely happy and in great spirits one day and then kill themselves the next. It is possible. But as far as they knew, there wasn't anything that had triggered LaVena to do anything. So the military goes on to say that LaVena had shot herself with her M16 rifle. But the questions began to raise even more when LaVena's body had gotten back to the States. Okay, so the Army advises the family straight off the bat, have a closed casket, like she's messed up, like the gunshot blast messed her face up, all this other stuff, because they were going up based off the fact that, like, she put the muzzle in her mouth and she pulled the trigger, and it was an M16 rifle gunshot blast, which means that it would do significant damage to her face. So they're like, have a closed casket. Do not open this up for anybody because you don't want to see this. And remember her how she was, like, do all this. And the family was like, no, like, we want to see our daughter. Like, we want to see her and remember her and stuff. Like, we want to say goodbye and everything. When they saw her, the actual bullet hole was small enough that it was on the side of her head. It was on the left side of her head. Okay. It was on the left side of her head. It looked like an entrance wound to a 9mm, her dad said. And again, her dad was a veteran. He knows. He shoots guns. He knows what a 9mm bullet hole looks like and what an M16 rifle bullet hole looks like. So obviously, they're looking at something. They're looking at this like, I thought she supposed to be shot herself with the M16. She wouldn't have had access to a 9mm gun. So the state of their daughter's body wasn't the only question that was being raised here. Her family wanted to know why their daughter committed suicide, supposedly. So the Army was like, oh.
Alex, why would she not have access to a 9mm?
Because usually only MPs have access to 9mm, MPs and higher ups. But her family wanted to know why their daughter was supposedly suicidal. So the Army tries going, oh, she was suicidal and depressed because, like, maybe she had a fight with her boyfriend. Like, yeah. And so when pressed on examples, they said that, oh, she had been eating a lot of ice cream and was emotional.
So first of all, she's a 19-year-old girl who's deployed in the middle of a war, and she's old enough to remember things like 9/11.
Yep.
All right. Let's start with that. Right. Second, it's clear she's being mansplained to. She's being diminished. So, yeah, I would eat my feelings too.
And even if she was eating her feelings, that doesn't mean she's suicidal.
Right.
Like, what? So her parents were obviously looking at them like, are you nuts? Like, that doesn't make you suicidal at all. So that's when the military was like, oh, we're dropping another bombshell. Apparently, while she was over there, in the 8 weeks that she was there, LaVena had been sexually assaulted and was being treated for an STD. Her parents were literally floored because they had no clue that LaVena had even been assaulted, let alone had an STD. And she was being treated for it. It was a curable one. Now, no names have ever come to light about who assaulted her. Like, we don't know exactly what STD it was because that never really came out, and it's not important, quite frankly. The only important thing about that was who assaulted her, but no names ever came to light for her. None of that. So they're trying to say that that was the reason why she killed herself, okay? And when LaVena had her funeral, when you are a soldier who dies, okay, when your body gets flown back from overseas, they take you, I think, to Virginia, and that's where the funeral team essentially preps you. They clean you up, they get you ready to go. They put you in your uniform that you're going to wear for the last time, that you're going to be buried in. They get you ready. Her father found, like, now they have not seen her actual, like, body yet. Okay, because by the time they saw her again, besides the 9mm bullet hole, she looked cleaned up and very much not like the kind of person that would have taken a gunshot to the mouth and stuff. So when she had her funeral, the father found out that her gloves had actually been glued onto her hands. That's not a usual thing that happens with dead bodies. They don't normally glue their clothes onto their hands. So when he had them removed, because he requested to have them removed, when he had them removed, it looked like they had chemical burns on them. Now, again, the Army tried to be like, oh, there are chemical burns from the glue, but it didn't match up. So, but she looks very put together for somebody who had a gunshot wound to the face. So obviously he requests her autopsy. Her autopsy was performed on July 22nd. However, he didn't get it until the end of August. And when they got it, they found out that a lot of stuff didn't add up with what was eventually later discovered on her body through pictures.
So, couple things. First of all, I'm hearing she was sexually assaulted and nobody was ever punished for that.
Nope, she put in a report for it. I'm assuming that because when you get an STD in the military, you have to disclose how you got it. You have to. So basically, this is before SHARP was put into place, essentially. This is before Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. So obviously, you can kind of see what kind of military it is. Like, it's very much...
And Alex, what's SHARP? I don't know any of these terms. I don't know what any of these things are.
SHARP is a trash thing. So SHARP is basically the sexual harassment assault response prevention program. So basically what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to make our soldiers safer. And instead, it bores us to death with thousands of hours of PowerPoints and does absolutely nothing to protect you. We will get to that later. So, but this is before all that and everything. And so LaVena, when she went to go get treated for the STD, she obviously had to say how she got it and who she got it from. Because when you are deployed, sexual relations are not okay. You can actually get seriously reprimanded for them. So that's
clearly this person didn't.
Yeah, so that's when it came out that LaVena had been sexually assaulted and that the military had been looking into it, but obviously not hard enough. Again, It has happened. I've personally seen it happen. And yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So, yeah, but the name had never come out to her parent. As far as I know, her parents don't know who sexually assaulted her. As far as I know, whoever did it was never brought forward.
Okay. So now tell us about the autopsy and what it said.
So the autopsy basically, like I said, when LaVena died, the Army gave the story. This is basically the rundown of events that the Army gave when LaVena died. On the 18th of July, LaVena got off of work about 4 or 5 p.m. Her normal routine would go to PT, which is just exercise and stuff. It's PT.
Physical therapy?
No, not that kind of PT. It's literally just exercise. They call it PT. But hold on, there's another. It stands for another word. It's not. I can't remember the name right now because my brain is physical training. That's what it is. So it's PT, stands for physical training. So she would normally go to physical training afterwards, which she was going because when she was found in her PT shorts and shirt and her PT pants and shirt and everything. So, however, somebody apparently looked for her, according to the Army report, saw that she was hanging out with a guy for almost 4 hours. No names ever came forward about that guy that were released to the public yet. They talked to the soldier who said that they hung out, that he and LaVena had hung out. They'd gone to the shopping area that was on the base, and they left around 10 p.m. He walked her back to her room, and then he walked back to his. LaVena is then found at 1:20 a.m. in a contractor's tent.
So not even in her own room like he said she would be.
Yeah. So
also, that doesn't exactly line up when she was in her PT clothes.
Yeah. So she obviously had been planning on going to PT because that's why she was dressed in her PT clothes. So the Army is saying. Now, as we get more into this, I'm going to be describing why the autopsy reports and the stuff on her body did not match up. Now, the photo of the crime scene that I'm going to show y'all, it is pretty graphic, so please just advise yourself before watching it, before not watching it, but before looking at it, because it is pretty graphic, and I hate that we even have to look at it. But it will be up on our website, truecrimeandchill.com, as well as you should be looking at it right now if you are watching the YouTube. So if you look at it, you see LaVena on the floor of the tent in her PTs, and she's got her reflector belt on. It looks like there is a can of what could look like aerosol spray, kind of like down by her feet. It looks like there's like charred burn piles next to her. Like it on the right side of the picture, you see a cot, and then on the other side, perfectly laying right next to the cot, is an M16 rifle. That dark stain behind her, that's not her hair. That is her blood. So when I first looked at this, I thought, oh my God, did her hair come out of her braids? Like, what happened? No, that was her blood. So the photo that her parents got originally, they were all black and white photocopies because obviously they pressed for photos of everything. So the Army sent them photos, but they didn't send them photos. They sent them black and white photocopies of all the crime scene photos, all the reports that the MPs filled out. Basically nothing that was clear. Really, when her dad looked at this, all he saw was a sketch from the MPs that had processed the scene, and then a very grainy photo of the crime scene photo. But it was enough for him to realize that, yes, that was his daughter laying there on the floor. No, that was not her tent. And yes, that was her M16 that was lying way away from her, way too far away for it to be considered a suicide by her. So what was weird is also included in the photocopies was a photocopy of a CD-ROM. Okay, so now a lot of people were like, oh, well, somebody just messed up and just threw that in there and everything. But a lot of people speculate that there was that was kind of like a, hey, there's more that you guys need to look into clue. So the parents see the CD-ROM, and they knew that there was more that they weren't seeing, including like crime scene photos of autopsy photos of things that would match up. The family fought for the CD-ROM, but the Army basically said, no, people's names were on it that needed to be protected. And the family was like, no, if their names are on it, that means they are involved in our daughter's death. We want to know. The Army said no. 2 years. 2 years. Many lawyers, a congressman calling out the military in front of national news during a conference about Pat Tillman, who also died mysteriously by friendly fire, by the way. And the military was like, oh yeah, totally, we'll let you have what's on that CD-ROM. And then after they got off the cameras, they're like, you're not seeing that, so good luck. 2 years and all of this stuff, they finally get all the actual pictures. And they find out that the autopsy didn't match up, and this is why. So if we go back to the crime scene photo, the autopsy basically said, the autopsy didn't mention any of this, okay? LaVena's body was put through it, okay? She had bruises and abrasions on her face. Her eye was hanging out of her socket. She had burns all over her body that looked like somebody tried setting her body on fire but didn't quite get to it. And bite marks, okay? Broken nose as well. Some of her teeth were knocked out. There was also sexual abuse present. However, the autopsy didn't mention any of that. There were also acid burns on her inner thighs and major bruising on her genital area. And there was corrosive material that was poured on her vaginal area that looked like it was covering up sexual abuse. Parts of her vagina, anus, and tongue had been removed. The vagina and the anus probably were removed because there was, proof, probably some evidence of sexual abuse there. Part of her tongue had been removed because it lined up with where the 9mm hole was. So people think, including her family, that when she was shot, the bullet went into her tongue, and whoever shot her or whoever was covering it up went in and cut it out of her tongue. So she had also been redressed in her uniform, and there was evidence on her back that she had been dragged through the dirt, and there was a trail of blood outside the contractor's tent. So what the military is trying to say is that LaVena not only killed herself, but she beat the crap out of herself first. She tried to set fire to herself. She tried to put acid burns all over her body. She cut
out places where it'd be really hard to reach.
Yeah, she cut out parts of her genital area and her tongue, and then redressed herself and laid down and died.
And drugged herself.
Yeah, and drugged herself, which means that she wasn't killed in the contractor's tent. And I'm sitting here, and the tent was on fire. That was the only reason somebody found her body, is because a contractor and I have it right here, I gotta look at it, because I wrote it down, Kellogg, Brown, and Root Contracting Company that was out there, okay? He was the one who found her, said he heard a gunshot wound, went to the tent and saw the tent on fire and saw her body. However, the tent wasn't engulfed in flames. It was just kind of there. And the only reason he saw it was on fire was because, back to the crime scene photo, when you look at the charred remains of something on her side right there, we don't know what it is. The military tried to say it was letters from her boyfriend breaking up with her. That's why she decided to kill herself.
Right.
So obviously her parents were like,
don't be suspicious.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. But that's a lot to take in.
It is.
That is a lot to take in. And it's it's 2021, and her parent and the Army is still saying, nope, No, she definitely killed herself. She definitely killed herself.
So there's just some pieces there that make it really obvious that she didn't kill herself. Mostly, if absolutely nothing else, the blood leading out of the tent. Let's start.
Let's start with the most obvious part, and then we'll go into everything else.
Right. Let's just start with the glaring elephant in the room, which is blood leading to the contractor's tent.
And the fact that she wasn't even in her own place. She was in a contractor's tent.
Right. Next, let's discuss how the M16, even if, okay, even if she had somehow figured out a way to shoot herself in the face with that gigantic gun.
Which it's possible if you have long enough arms.
Sure.
It is possible if you have long enough arms.
I'm not saying it's not.
However.
Okay, hold on. Let me finish. Let the girl finish. There is no reason. So you would, like, for example, let's go back to Kurt Cobain really quick, right? Part of the reason they figure he shot himself is because he still had the gun in his hand. Okay? This gun is not only not right next to her, it is on the other side of a cot that she's lying next to. And there's even, and that floor does not look like the kind of floor where something would slide easily.
Yep.
It's like dirt.
No, it is dirt. That's literally what
it is. It is a dirt floor. There are no marks showing a gun sliding that distance.
Yeah.
And if she had, say, been sitting on the cot and then, shot herself and dropped the gun may have landed in that position. She would not have landed in the position she's in.
Exactly. The way she looks, it looks like she looks like as if she looked if somebody dragged her in there.
This does not take a forensics expert to see.
But see, here's the thing, and this is coming from personal experience for myself. There was a sergeant in my old unit who sexually harassed my roommate at the time. And I was in a unit that was mostly guys. It was a unit that was mostly guys. And, being in a unit that is mostly guys, it's not uncommon to have the whole guy, mentality and stuff. So it's like, you're obviously going to hear jokes. You're obviously going to hear sayings. You're always going to hear stuff. But this sergeant was always very pushy, if that makes sense. He was always saying really weird comments that would make me and some of the other girls just kind of uncomfortable. But, we just never said anything. We just kind of ha, 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 laughed it off and everything and stuff. And so I get brought into the conference room, and they sit me down, they go, and it's the head of Sharp, because, every unit has a Sharp person, basically. If something happens, you can go to them and report it, and they'll help you through it. They're supposed to. So it's me, it's our commander, it's our first sergeant, it's the person for Sharp for our unit, and it's CID. And they're like, look, your roommate made some accusations against one of the sergeants here, and this is who it is. And she brought up the fact that he made you uncomfortable as well, and so we want to talk with you and kind of see if these were things that we needed to investigate further. Basically telling me that, hey, we need to know if this is a true thing we need to investigate, which, it started out fine. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, he has said a lot of stuff that makes me uncomfortable and everything. And I know that he said a lot of stuff that makes some of the other girls uncomfortable. And it was a lot of, well, you do realize that, it's the guy mentality. And I was like, I understand that, but if it's making us uncomfortable, then they shouldn't be doing it. And if I flat out told him, I said, if my roommate is saying that this happened, then I wholeheartedly believe her. I fully trust her, and I believe her, and I believe that this happened. And they basically made it seem like, oh, well, if we do this, it could ruin this guy's reputation, blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't want to do that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a statement. My statement stands. This is what's happening. So She was on track to becoming a E5, which is a sergeant. So to go from a specialist to an E5, you have to go to the board, you have to get the promotion points, you have to pass the promotion board. At the board, you do a series of stuff, and from there they basically say yay or nay on whether or not we think that you're okay enough. We think that you're good enough to become an E5. This soldier, if anybody deserved to become a sergeant, it was this girl. She was the first person to help me when I got to the unit. She was the one that always took us under her wing. She was the one that was always there to make sure that we were taken care of. She was the epitome of what sergeants should be. And she worked so hard to get this promotion. And I know because she was my roommate, I worked with her. I sat there and I read her study cards and I did everything with her to make sure that she could pass this board. And so she turns in this thing for sexual harassment against the sergeant, and she goes to the board and they basically tell her they don't think that she is ready to become a sergeant. They don't give her any reason. They just say they don't think she's ready. The sergeant in question, they end up slapping on the wrist and moving to another unit. Mm-hmm. So this girl is now not only having to deal with this devastating blow of not getting E5 promotion, but now also has to realize that nothing came from her reporting this when it was supposed to. And she ends up losing it. And I mean, losing it. And I look back on it now and I realize that she probably had a mental break, and that's probably what happened. But it made her case look less likely as strong. And it just blew my mind how easily this person was able to get away with this.
Yeah.
And 1 in 4 women in the military are sexually harassed or sexually assaulted. 1 in 4 women. And barely any of those cases ever get brought to justice. I almost became one of those 4 women. There was a guy in my unit that he was nice. I was nice to him. I thought he was cute at first, but I realized he was way too young for me. And I was like, nope, no, thank you and stuff. And so he would flirt with me all the time. And I used to tell him no. I was like, no, I'm not really interested in you like that. I'll be your friend, but I'm not interested in you like that. And I was doing laundry one night in our barracks laundry room, and he came in and I started chatting with him, and he got a little too close. And I kept telling him to back up, and he had me pinned up against the washer. And at that point, somebody had walked in, and he backed up, and I was able to get around him and leave the room. But if somebody had walked in, I don't know what would have happened.
That's still sexual assault?
Yeah. So
for the record, so you are 1 in 4. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so I went to my SHARP representative for my unit, and I told her what happened. And she looked at me and she went, are you sure you want to do this? Because nobody's going to believe you because of who you are. Because when I first got to my unit, a sergeant who was supposed to be looking out for me and who was supposed to be training me and leading me, decided to say I was screwing a married soldier because he let me borrow his truck because I didn't have a vehicle at the time. Mm-hmm. So it's not just men in the military who are doing it too.
No, it's not.
And it's very, very sad. And when I read LaVena's case, I understand why she didn't want to rock the boat. I understand why she was afraid of putting in that sexual assault thing. And I understand why our next case, Vanessa, was very afraid of putting in that report as well. So, moving on to that. Today, the Army sticks with the fact that LaVena committed suicide, even though nothing adds up. But no one is willing to listen or do anything about this. CNN, I think it was CNN. Yeah, CNN was going to do a huge story on this. A huge story. They interviewed people, they were going to bring it to front, and then all of a sudden they just didn't run it. Mm-hmm. So, nobody was willing to listen.
Did you want me to be surprised? Because I'm not.
Right. So, unfortunately, nobody was willing to listen to any of this until it happened again to another young soldier 15 years later. Again, like I said in the beginning, if you've been living under a rock for the past year, then you may not have heard of the Vanessa Guillen case. Vanessa was a bright, loving 20-year-old who was murdered on April 22nd, 2020 in Fort Hood, Texas. And another case that we are doing next episode that Amber will be presenting is actually also out of Fort Hood. So, yeah. So diving into Vanessa's case, forehead needs to be burned to the ground immediately. Like, I'm not the only person who thinks that either. So let's go in. So going into this, Vanessa Guillen was very much like LaVena. She was determined. She was hardworking. According to her friends, she was just really goofy and fun. She played sports in high school. Like, she loved her family. She like LaVena, she wanted to join the military from a young age. Not because, like, she wanted to carry on the family tradition, but because she wanted to help people. Like, that was, like, the main thing. She wanted to help protect people and stuff. She was just that kind of person. She was born in Houston, Texas, to Rogelio and Gloria Guillen, and they were both immigrants from Zacatecas State in Mexico. She had 5 siblings. She graduated high school in the top 15%. Like, this girl was on fire. Like, she was great. And from a young age, she was like, I want to join the military. 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 And as she got older, that never changed. And that was something that her parents said that she had always focused on. Like, no matter what, her end goal after high school was joining the military because she wanted to help people. She wanted to be that person. So in June of 2018, she joins the military as a small arms and artillery repair. Long story short, she works on weapons. She was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, which was about 3 hours away from her family, which is lucky because a lot of people don't get stationed that close to their family for the first time.
No.
And family was super important to Vanessa. So it really wasn't unusual for her to, like, call her boyfriend, her best friend, her sisters, her mom, her dad, like, multiple times a day.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I call you a lot sometimes. I call my dad, like, multiple times a day. I call Becky multiple times a day.
Well, right, but you're not active military.
Yeah, that's true. But, like, it's a very not uncommon thing, though, for, like, people to, like, call family members that are close. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, well, even active duty military, I don't call my family that much. And it's like, I mean, it's not really it's kind of just like a thing of, like, who you like talking to a lot. So because she called her mom so many times a day, okay, her family really grew worried when by the afternoon of April 22nd, 2020, they hadn't really heard anything from her. So that morning, she had called her mom, she called her sister, she called her mom again, like, all this other stuff. But it was kind of like around, like, noonish that she had just, like, dropped off the face of the planet, essentially. Like, she wasn't posting on Facebook. She wasn't answering Snapchat. She wasn't, like, calling anybody. She really just wasn't doing anything. Which, I mean, if that happens to me, like, 9 times out of 10, I'm taking a nap. But let's be real here.
And what happens when you disappear for a little while?
I get text messages from Amber asking if I'm alive.
And to which you answer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing about this is that...
It was very concerning she wasn't answering.
Right. Exactly. That's a huge red flag for somebody who is very active on their phone. And this is 2020. This is last year. Yeah. So it is not uncommon, especially during the shutdowns, the pandemics, the everything.
And this was, like, at the beginning of everything going on with the pandemic. Like, right. I don't think things had been fully shut down yet. They were just being talked about.
Possibly not in Texas. In Washington, they were.
Yeah. So in
because
Texas,
we had the big outbreak.
Yeah, in Texas, like, things were, like, starting to go. Mm-hmm. So Vanessa's sisters called her. So Vanessa's sisters, Myra and Lupe, called her. And I follow Myra on Twitter, and just following her throughout this whole journey of grief has just been absolutely heartbreaking. And the more I dug into this case, like, the more it hurt. So, like, my mom heart hurts for her mom, and my sister heart hurts for her sisters. So her mom tried calling, her sisters tried calling. Vanessa's sister Myra called her, and she got her voicemail. So she called again, call dropped. She called one more time, she got voicemail again, and that's when she honestly could feel like something was wrong. So in interviews that I watched with Myra, like, the interviewer was basically like, so did you know something was wrong then? She goes, absolutely. She's like, I knew from the second my mom told me that she had not checked in yet that something was wrong. I just didn't want to worry. So Myra did what any other sister would do, and she got in her car. She drove the 3 hours from Houston to Killeen to see if she could find her sister. However, Fort Hood is a very big base. It is one of the biggest bases in the US, okay? It houses, just for enlisted soldiers alone, it houses around 82,000 soldiers. And that's just enlisted personnel, okay? That's not counting families. That's not counting civilians that live on Fort Hood. That's not counting officers and higher ups that live on Fort Hood. That's just enlisted, okay? To put in perspective, Fort Campbell has 32,000. Okay, so it's a lot. So it is one, like, Myra didn't know where to start. She knew, like, where her sister worked. She knew where her sister's barracks were and everything. And obviously, like, she tried checking her barracks room to see if maybe she was taking a nap. She checked her work. Like, nobody really saw her and everything. So she, like, obviously goes to, like, try and talk to people about, like, where her sister could be. But she was, like, met with resistance. Like, when Myra went to I believe Myra went to the MPs first. And that's where Vanessa's higher-ups got involved. And they basically just kept asking her sister, like, hey, do you know anything? Like, do you know where she would have went? And Myra's like, if I knew something, I wouldn't be here. Like, really? Like, they don't believe that Vanessa just, like, vanished. She just ran away, or she didn't want to speak to her family at the time. And Myra didn't take that as, like, huh?
It happens.
I mean,
it just
does,
isn't
but at
the
the same time, completely ghosting on all social media. But again, the military didn't want to make a big deal because, again, Fort Hood is a huge base. Like, she could have been sleeping somewhere or something. But Myra, like, she really felt like something was wrong. She knew something was wrong. The military didn't actually admit that Vanessa was missing until the 23rd, and which was like 3 days after. And even then, they didn't, sorry, no, not 3 days after. It was a day after. And even then, they didn't put anything out to look for her until the 24th. So it was 2 full days after she went missing that they finally were like, oh, we should start looking for her. And even then, like, they figured she went AWOL, which is basically when you go AWOL in the military, that means you just run away.
Yeah.
And stuff. So,
because people do it.
Yeah, and they do, and it's very possible and everything, but they thought that she went AWOL. But when they started searching for her, they obviously searched from the last place that people saw her, which was her arms room. Now, her arms room, what you do in arms room is, it's where you keep the weapons. It's an armory. It's an arms room. It's where you keep the weapons. So when they checked,
and she worked on weapons, so it made sense for her to be there.
Yeah, and so when they checked the arms room, they found her car keys, her barracks room key, her ID, her wallet. They were all left in her arms room. Okay, her car, her Jeep, I believe, was actually still in the parking lot as well. Yeah, so like they were like, oh, she probably just went AWOL because she's like 19 years old, and I mean she's 20 years old and she don't care and blah blah blah. But the thing is all of her NCOs said the opposite. They were like, she was a very dedicated soldier. Like, she did her work. She did everything that she was supposed to. She showed up to work on time. Like, she was a very dedicated person. Same with her family. Like, I remember hearing about it on Facebook. And I remember when it was put out, when the Army finally put the BOLO out, which is a be on the lookout, it basically was like, oh, hey, like, the soldier might be missing. Like, we don't know what's going on. If you've seen them, please give us some information. Like, there really wasn't a lot to, like, go off of except for, like, where she was last seen, essentially. And her parents did not like that. So, a little bit of the timeline leading up to this, just so that way people know. April 22nd is when Vanessa last had contact with her family. Okay. So that was the last time her family had contact with her. That's the day that Myra went up to go check on her. April 23rd, Criminal Investigative Division, which is CID, was notified by a commissioned officer in Vanessa's unit, basically that she was reported missing by her sister. So 24 hours, like whatever, they waited 24 hours. April 24th, CID issues a missing soldier letter for Guillen, which is basically like they were like, hey, like that's what I said, like, hey, like, you know, be on the lookout for her. If you see her, please contact us. Like, we need to begin a search. Okay. So military personnel were like, okay, she might actually be missing, but she's probably AWOL, so we just need to look for her. They started searching. Hundreds of soldiers went out in droves all around Fort Hood looking for her. Vanessa's family and friends started looking for her. They started doing a search everywhere. At first, they started like looking. At first, they started like looking at just like the base. They thought maybe she was on the base, maybe she did that or whatever. But then they realized, like, you know, her car was still there, so somebody would have had to pick her up. There's no cameras in this area, none. Yeah. Yeah.
In 2020.
Oh, honey, it's a military base. They don't give a shit.
They should.
They really don't. They really don't, though. Like, they still use computers from the early 2000s. Like, let's be real here. Yeah. So.
Did you mention that you were stationed there at one point?
Oh, I wasn't stationed at Fort Hood. Dustin was.
I thought you were. Well, right, but you were there with him.
Yeah, I lived in Killeen, and let me tell you, Killeen was a hellhole. Like, straight up. This whole base is insane, and we will get to that in a second. But, so like I said, soldiers started searching, family and friends started searching. The Army closed ranks. They basically just put up a front of, yes, we're looking for the soldier. No, we don't think any foul play is suspected. Yes, we think she left on her own accord. Like, they really wouldn't talk to the parents. They wouldn't talk to the family. They wouldn't talk to friends. Nothing. They didn't really give updates, really, or try to, like, work with the family or anything. Like, because I remember this. Like, they would, like, have somebody go on camera and be like, yeah, we're searching for Vanessa, but, like, whatever. Like, they were just very nonchalant about it. And when news stations first started getting a hold of this story in Killeen, a lot of the news stations said the same thing. Like, you know what? She's probably AWOL. It's probably not that important. We're not going to focus on this right now. It wasn't until, like, protests started happening because her family organized them and rallies started happening every single week that the media in Killeen had gotten involved. And that's when, and it was just the media in Killeen at first. It wasn't, like, national news yet. And I honestly fully believe that Vanessa's case would have been swept under the rug if her family had not pushed so hard. Okay?
Oh, probably. Yeah.
So once the media caught on to it, the case started gaining traction. The military kind of had to save face. So along with the soldiers that had been searching, they brought in FBI, they brought in local law enforcement, they started using the CID a little bit more. And it was around this time that the Mexican restaurant that Vanessa visited tons of times, and I mean so many times that, like, this guy who owned the restaurant knew Vanessa by name. He knew bits about her and her family. Like, they would chat every time she came in. She would go in, like, multiple times a week.
It was her place. Yeah.
Yeah. And he ended up giving a video of surveillance footage to the news station about a week before Vanessa disappeared, of the last time Vanessa was seen at the restaurant. And he tells them, he's like, you know, she looked very worried, very scared, very not herself. She wasn't very bubbly as she normally was and stuff like that. And when he tried asking her what was wrong, she just said, oh, you know, work's just tough. I'm not getting enough sleep. And, like, her parents had come out and said the same thing. Like, you know, she had been losing weight. Like, she had been getting bags under her eyes. She hadn't really been doing too well. She kept trying to be like, oh, I'm fine.
The way that we do.
When the surveillance video came out for this, okay, the parents kind of dropped a bombshell that people weren't really expecting, that Vanessa had been sexually harassed at work by a sergeant who had multiple harassment complaints put in on him. Nothing had gone anywhere. She was thinking about reporting it, but she didn't know because she was scared to.
Pause for dramatic effect.
Bump. Yeah. Like,
sorry, it's becoming the underlying common theme with all of these cases that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's just, I know that's really sarcastic of me for such a really sad thing. But it's like this is the theme here.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Her parents dropped this bombshell on a Telemundo, like, news conference, because her parents her parents don't speak English and stuff. So they spoke to Telemundo news conferences. Her sisters do, which is why her sisters were her parents' translators, everything. So her parents ended up setting up a conference with a Telemundo, like, news channel, and they dropped this bombshell. And once this bombshell was dropped, the military was like, crap, now we really have to get involved. So unknown to anybody except for the military, on April 28th, Criminal Investigative Division interviewed somebody who may have been the last person to see Vanessa for the last time. Okay. This person was Aaron David Robinson. He was a 20-year-old. He was from Chicago, Illinois. He joined the Army in 2017. He was a combat engineer. He was a specialist and stuff. And so, like, they interviewed him because one of Vanessa's text messages on her phone came from him about a work thing. So obviously they were like, okay, we need to talk to this guy. They'd also ended up, like, talking to another group of soldiers. So the 3 soldiers were basically standing under the tree and confirmed that, like, yeah, the last time we saw Vanessa was like 11:30 a.m. or whatever. Like, that's when we saw her, and we all saw her because we were all outside smoking. And if you know anybody in the military, you know that's a huge thing. It's like, I really love smoke. So
Hey, you get breaks that way.
yeah, so Army
Same thing with waitressing.
Yeah. So Army CID interviews Aaron for the first time on April 28th. In that interview, they were able to talk to Aaron, and they said, and basically what came out is, like, the day of the 22nd, Vanessa received a text from Aaron, who was another armory worker. The text basically said that he needed to compare some serial numbers for equipment, which was a pretty common thing, honestly. And, they just needed to compare the numbers for equipment. So when he texted Vanessa, she, according to witnesses that were also in the arms room, responded, left her stuff in the arms room, and according to Aaron, she met up with him. They compared the serial numbers, and he locked up and left while she went to her motor pool. He then said a week after she vanished that he spent the night home with his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilera. Now, that's where the 3 soldiers that I said came in, because they said that, yes, we did see, when they were interviewed, I think mid-May, because they came forward and were like, oh, hey, I think we saw the girl that you were talking about. This is the information that we have and stuff. Mm-hmm. So they came forward and they were like, yeah, we saw her about 11:30 a.m. And later that night, Vanessa was confirmed as being seen by a sergeant when they did barracks checks. That was one of the reasons why the MPs thought she was just avoiding her family, because that night she had technically been seen. Once more information started coming out, the Army started investigating sexual assault allegations, and the impact it had on the public was eye-opening.
Oh, yeah.
Again, if you've been living under a rock, you may not have known about the hashtag I am Vanessa Guillen. It's basically where women in the military, and some men, because it does happen, came forward and told their stories. And when I mean the tea was being spilled, I mean it was hot. Some of these stories were coming out, and I was like, oh my God. And it's like, some of these were 15, 20 years old. These were women who were in the military in the 70s, who were this is what happened, and this is how it happened, and all this other stuff. And it's it just kind of brought to the forefront how under the rug everything was swept. Yeah. How much of a man's world, quote unquote, the military was, and how much it needed to change. And this is how LaVena's case got brought up again as well, because the circumstances surrounding both of these cases are eerily similar. Eerily similar. Both 2 young women who are lower enlisted, who are very bright, who are very beautiful. Both of them were very pretty. And let me tell you, if you've never been in the military, if a new girl comes in to a unit full of mostly guys, it's like watching vultures descend on a dead body. It is frightening. So this is basically a picture of the area where Vanessa's armory room is and Aaron's armory room is. Okay. They're right next to each other, which would explain why Vanessa would have left all of her stuff in her armory room if she was just going to come back anyways after comparing serial numbers. Right?
Okay.
And then you also see where her car was parked. Mm-hmm. So it's all very close together.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose.
But I mean, so from the maps,
it's spread out, but in terms of location, they are closer than they could be otherwise.
Yeah, so it was very much just a walking distance and stuff. So yeah. Sexual assault in the military, it's very hard to actually get someone prosecuted, because the thing is, sexual assault in the military is treated the exact same way sexual assault is treated in the real world. What were you wearing? Why were you drinking that much? Why were you alone with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you sure you want to ruin their career? All this stuff. And it's absolutely, it's horrifying. It is horrifying to see. There were interviews that I was watching. There was a Dateline show called Voices for Vanessa that I watched. And just some of the interviews of some of the women on there, it broke my heart. It literally broke my heart. This one woman told the thing about how a NCO literally grabbed her breast. And she told him, what the hell? And he basically said, nobody's going to believe you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, And then you have things that happen like this, and then you see like the comments on Facebook of men in the military. Well, what were they expecting when they decided to join? Not to be raped, not to be murdered, not to be
To be treated
assaulted,
like a person
like.
with feelings.
And the thing is, the very sad thing is, it doesn't just happen to guys. There was I believe he was a sergeant on Fort Hood who went missing. I don't believe he's ever been found yet. He went missing, and he had reported a sexual assault against himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he went missing, and I don't think he's been found yet. And that's the sad part. And I'm sitting here going, this is supposed to be the strongest military in the world. This is supposed to be the ones that are supposed to keep us safe. But yet, they can't even keep their own safe. They protect who they want, and they just say, screw the rest. We're now into June. Okay. And it, like, so May 18th, so we're just going to kind of go through the timeline again. April 28th, criminal investigation interviews Aaron for the first time. April 30th, and that's where he basically says, yeah, I saw Vanessa that day. This is what happened. Like, she left we compared serial numbers. She left the arms room. I left the arms room. I went home, and I ended up spending the night. I ended up staying at home with my girlfriend all day. Whatever. April 30th, Secretary of the Army Ryan D. McCarthy makes a statement basically saying, quote, I'd like to start this out this morning by talking about a missing soldier, Private First Class Vanessa Guillen, in hopes of increasing the public's awareness and assistance in finding her. Private First Class Guillen went missing on the 22nd of April from Fort Hood, Texas. In cooperation with local law enforcement efforts, the Army will continue to aggressively search for her. Our hearts go out to her family, and we will not stop looking until we find her, unquote. So very basic, generic type thing. And this is, I believe, after the bombshell came out about the sexual harassment. May 18th is when the witnesses are interviewed that observe, when witnesses are interviewed saying like, oh yeah, so we saw Vanessa that day at 11. May 19th, Aaron basically says, yeah, you can go ahead and search my cell phone, because law enforcement searched his records and everything, and was just like, yeah, okay, whatever, you can search my cell phone, I don't care. So we're now into June, okay? Cecily, Aaron's girlfriend, is interviewed for the first time in June, and she basically backs up Aaron's story. Like, oh yeah, totally, we were at home, blah, 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 all this stuff. They searched both Aaron and Cecily's phone records. Cecily was actually married to another soldier that was stationed out of Fort Hood, and they were separated, okay? Now, Aaron could have actually gotten in trouble for that. Cecily, not so much, but Aaron, yes, because it was still infidelity with another soldier's wife. So keep that in mind. Both their phones pinged at the same place, at the same time, for the same amount of time near the Leon River on the night that Vanessa had gone missing. So when they were questioned about that, both Cecily and Aaron said, oh yeah, it was because we took a drive that night. Like, we were at home, but we took a drive that night. There was, on the phone records, there also show a lot of phone calls between Aaron and Cecily that day. So if you're with somebody all day, why are you calling them so much? So Aaron and Cecily both said, oh yeah, it's because I was looking for my phone. However, when you call somebody's phone and they don't pick up, it just shows that it was an incoming call. However, when you call somebody's phone and they pick up, that's when the time starts. And there were like 5-minute calls, 10-minute calls, 10-minute calls, 5-minute calls.
Yeah, it won't go more than 10 to 20 seconds if it doesn't get picked up.
Exactly. So it wasn't matching up to the story that they were saying. So the police were kind of like, okay, that's a little suspicious, but okay. So officials started searching out by the Leon River. And at this time, the public had really no idea why they were searching out there. They didn't know what tip was given. They didn't have Aaron and Cecily in custody because at this time, they really didn't have anything but circumstantial evidence. And you can't always arrest somebody on circumstantial evidence. And they knew that they had one shot to do this, because if you arrest somebody with not enough evidence, you can really only keep them in holding, I think, for 72 hours before you have to let them go. Mm-hmm. So officials started searching out by the Leon River. Nothing was really found. They did find a burned out tough box in the woods. And a tough box, for those of you who don't know, is kind of like it's a plastic, like, box, I guess, would be. I'll post a picture on our website, truecrimeandchill.com, as well. But it's basically like a plastic It's basically like a plastic box that military members store their stuff in when they're going on deployments and stuff. It's a tough box. It keeps things safe.
Israel Keys used them.
Yes.
For the record.
Yes. But it is big enough to hide a body in. So, fun fact there. So anyway, so they find a burned out tough box. And they're like, okay, this is really weird. But they don't find anything else except for this tough box. So that doesn't really get out to the public. Because obviously, it didn't really get out to the public till later. So 10 days later, on June 30th, at about 1 p.m, contractors were working out at the river and discovered what looked to be human remains. And they said they saw what looked to be human hair. And they dug deeper and it was human remains. They ended up calling local law enforcement and CID. CID came out and recovered the remains, I think, from 3 different areas around the area. So 3 different areas. They also go and talk to Cecily and Aaron again. As Cecily was being interviewed, Aaron fled Fort Hood. Okay, so they went and picked up Cecily from work. And they were going to go pick up Aaron, but Aaron found out that the human remains had been found, and he ran. On July 1st, shortly after midnight, Aaron killed himself before he was apprehended by police, and on July 5th, the remains were identified as Vanessa. After 2 months, the question of what happened to the young soldier was answered. But what came from Cecily really only raised more questions than answers. We also find out that the witnesses that saw Vanessa had gotten their time wrong. They had seen Vanessa a whole hour earlier at 10:30, not 11:30, which honestly was really easy to do. It was probably just like, oh yeah, we probably saw her around 11:30. I think that's when we had our smoke break. But then they come back and they're like, oh my God, we realized that at this time we were actually here. So they saw her a whole hour earlier. Around noon, some other witnesses saw Aaron struggling to drag a tough box to his car. But again, nobody thought anything of it because, again, tough boxes are heavy when they're filled with gear. And everybody in the military has one, so nobody thought anything of it. It also came out that the sergeant who said that she was accounted for that night never actually did his checks that night. So he didn't know that she was missing that night.
Of all the nights for you not to do what you're supposed to do.
It's very common for them to not do their checks. It is very common for them to not do their checks.
Sure, but of all the nights.
Yeah, but it's very common for, barracks inspection people to, just not do them. Oh yeah, I totally did it. And then continue sitting there. And if you say that you've never done it, you're fucking lying. Because it gets to be about midnight, 1 o'clock, and you're falling asleep at the desk and you don't want to move. Yeah, because you're supposed to do it every hour. So, basically, all this stuff is coming out. Aaron kills himself. You find out afterwards, because the parents obviously wanted to see the body footage, because the mom talked to 2 other witnesses who were around Aaron at the time of the shooting that was in the neighborhood. They heard 2 gunshots instead of just 1, which would have happened if he had killed himself. A Texas loophole prevents anybody from seeing the body cam footage of Aaron being shot or killing himself.
Interesting.
Yeah. So a Texas loophole prevents that. So I'm sitting here going, are you serious? So not only can we not, I understand the public, but that's crucial stuff. If you have people coming forward saying, no, we heard 2 gunshots instead of 1, that's crucial stuff. There's a lot to unpack.
So what makes, that's suspicious for, here's the big thing. And I know a lot of people are like, well, maybe he missed the first time, right? But the thing is, it takes guts to do it to begin with.
Yeah.
If you missed the first time, having the guts to try it a second time.
He would have had to look at himself for a second and be like, oh my God, I missed. And in that time, the police definitely could have taken him out. However, if that's how it happened, then show that's how it happened. So it really just raised a lot of questions because everybody's like, and then that's not even that's the tip of it, basically. Mm-hmm. So everybody thought at first that the person who killed Vanessa, they thought that Aaron was the sergeant that she had, that had sexually harassed her. But then it comes out that he wasn't. He was never involved in any of that. Like, the only thing he really had going against him was the fact that he was dating Cecily, so he could have gotten, like, a slap on the hand for dating another soldier's wife, even though they were separated.
Huh.
But here's the thing. How would Vanessa have known that she was married? So, basically, that's where the affidavit comes into play. The affidavit and some other things that happened. So, basically, when Cecily was arrested, after Aaron died, the only thing we have is Cecily's account of what happened and what Aaron had supposedly told her. This is the only thing that we have.
Right.
So, basically, it's saying that, like, this is the affidavit, and I'm basically just going to not ad-lib, but, like, just, like, not, like, read this through real quick. It's basically saying that a witness stated that Vanessa left the arms room where she was working to visit the arms room at another location of Fort Hood, one that was controlled by Aaron Robinson, in order to confirm serial numbers for weapons and equipment. The witness then verified that Guillen had left the arms room without her U.S. Army identification card, bank card, or car keys with her barracks key attached. He stated that her property was still in the arms room when he secured the arms room for the day. So that's not an unusual thing. She can easily just go and find him and be like, hey, because she had her phone on her. So she could easily go and find him and be like, hey, I need you to unlock the arms room so I can get my stuff or whatever. But he figured she would be back. But she never came back when he secured it for the day. He didn't think much of it at the time, I guess, but I don't know. It also doesn't state who the witness was. Search of Guillen's phone records revealed that the last outgoing text message from her phone was a message to Robinson's phone, saying that was a message to Robinson's phone. Robinson was one of the last people to know and has seen her alive. On 4/22/2020, Robinson stated that he had texted Guillen to inform her that he was in his arms room. He said she read serial numbers for equipment, and afterwards he gave her paperwork and the serial number for a .50 caliber machine gun, which needed to be serviced. He said she left the arms room, and he believed that she would have gone to the motor pool next. Witnesses at the motor pool prepared to receive the paperwork from her stated that she did not arrive with the paperwork. So then we have more people saying that she never showed up somewhere. On 4/28, CID interviewed Robinson. Among the things that he said concerning his activities on 4/22, Robinson stated that after he finished his work, he went to his off-post residence he shared with his girlfriend, Cecily Aguilar, and did not leave for the rest of the night, except for around 6:30 when he had come on post to sign on to government computer to enroll in training, which is true. He did sign on to a government computer. However, if he stayed there is up to debate. Because again, no cameras, and you can easily just sign in and leave. On 5/18, two witnesses were interviewed stating that on 4/22, they observed Aaron, pulling a large tough box with wheels that appeared to be heavy in weight, coming out of the arms room, the same room where Specialist Robinson worked. The two witnesses observed Specialist Robinson load the tough box into his vehicle and drive away. On 5/19, Robinson consented to a search of his phone. A review of the phone logs revealed that Robinson called Aguilar multiple times during the night of 4/22 and as late as 3:30 a.m. on 4/23. Specialist Robinson also received calls from Aguilar throughout the day. Cecily, girlfriend of Robinson, was interviewed on 6/19. Aguilar stated she was with Robinson all night. She was asked why Specialist Robinson would call her after midnight and if he was at the residence with her. She stated she could not find her phone and had Robinson call the phone to help her find it. The statement, however, is inconsistent with the lengths of the call. Robinson called Aguilar several times throughout the night, and the calls after midnight were for lengths greater than 1 minute. Aguilar, during a re-interview, stated that she had lied in her previous statement. She said that she did leave her residence because one of the ways she copes is by taking long drives. Aguilar stated that she was with Robinson the night of 4/22, and they took a long drive to a park in Belton to look at the stars. Belton is about 30 minutes away from Fort Hood. Aguilar stated that after going to the park, they returned home. An analysis of phone records pertaining to Robinson's telephone was conducted. Review of the location data revealed at approximately 1:59 a.m. on the 23rd, his cell phone was identified in the vicinity of Farm to Market Road 436 and West Main Street in Belton, Texas, specifically on or around a bridge. Robinson's cell phone was then tracked along the Leon River in a northward direction. His cell phone remained in the area for approximately 2 hours. Cecily's cellular tower location data was also analyzed and revealed that she and his phones were near the Leon River together on the 23rd and the 26th. So 2 separate dates. Based on this data, they searched the river. They found a burn site that was disturbed earth that was identified. It had the burned remains of a plastic tote or tough box that were found nearby in an area where Robinson's phone pinged. Soil beneath the burn site was remarkably softer and moister than the soil found at similar depths, merely feet away, and had an odor of decomposition. However, no remains were located. which means that Vanessa's body had been there, but it was moved. At 1 p.m. on 6/30, CID was notified that contractors were working on a fence adjacent to the Leon River in Belton, Texas, discovered what to be human remains. They searched the area, identified the scattered human remains that appeared to have been placed in concrete-like substance and buried. At 8:30 p.m. on June 30th, Aguilar was interviewed and admitted that Robinson had told her that on 4/22, he struck a female soldier in the head with a hammer multiple times in his arms room, killing her on Fort Hood. Cecily knows that this arms room is located within the Special Maritime Territorial Judgment of the United States in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction. Aguilar advised the female soldier never made it out of the Army alive, referring to Fort Hood. Specialist Robinson then placed her in a box, moved the box to a location near the Leon River in Belton. And this is what happened next, according to Cecily. On the evening of 4/22, early morning of 4/23, Robinson picked up Aguilar at the gas station where she worked and took her out to a site near the Leon River near a bridge. A box with wheels and handles is already there. So he dropped her body off, according to her, and then drove back and grabbed her and then came back and got her. Robinson walked Aguilar over to the woods, opened the box up for her to see, and she saw a dead female inside the box. Aguilar, on a later date, identified the dead female as Vanessa Guillen. Now, she had been posting pictures after on her Instagram of all this. Like, not of this, but, like, she'd been posting pictures after on her Instagram, just, like, totally carefree and nonchalant. And this is what happened. To more easily dispose of and conceal the body of the dead female, Robinson and Aguilar proceeded to dismember the dead female's body. They used a hatchet or axe and a machete-type knife. They removed the limbs and the head from the body. Specialist Robinson and Aguilar attempted to burn the body, however, the body would not burn completely. They then placed the dead female in 3 separate holes and covered up the remains. So this is based off of what Cecily said happened. Now, here's my thing with all of this. Robinson had no reason to kill Vanessa. None. He had no reason to kill Vanessa. Even people that knew both of them said the same thing. No reason. The Army tried to come out with something saying, like, oh, well, she saw a picture on his phone and, like, was going to report the fact that he was dating another soldier's wife. How would she have known that Cecily was married already? Exactly.
How is that any of her business, or why does it matter? Or,
and I'm sorry, but Vanessa didn't seem like the type of girl that would just be like, oh, hey, I'm going to start this drama just because. So another thing is like, there's a base this big. You see from the pictures, which we'll have on our website, which I got from this amazing website called The Crime Sheet, who basically just like had like everything broken down and honestly had a lot of the same questions that I had. But you see from the pictures how close the buildings are. Like, you're telling me nobody saw anything. He was able to bludgeon this girl to death in an armory where nobody saw anything. And don't get me wrong, I asked a lot of people who've worked in armories, and they said that it really depends on the time of day, what's going on that day. Like, it honestly really depends. But, like, you're telling me that, like, this specialist was able to do all this. And, like, like, really? Like, really? And on top of the fact of a blunt weapon creates blood spatter. If you're bashing somebody in the head with something, you're creating blood spatter. So you're telling me that he would have been able to, even if, like, he bashes her head in with a hammer and she falls to the floor and he immediately scoops her up and puts her into the box, she's still going to bleed all over that floor. It's a concrete floor. She's still going to bleed all over that floor. There's still going to be blood on the walls. You got to remember, there's weapons lining the walls. So there's all these weapons that have blood spatter on them. You're telling me nobody noticed the fact that the arms room smelled like bleach. You're telling me that he was able to not only put her body, bludgeon her to death, put her body in the box, and then clean it up enough to where he could get the box out of the arms room, lock it up, and go away and dispose of her before anybody even realized. Like, how was he able to quickly clean up that quick without anybody noticing? And I mean, yeah, when CID went back and, like, investigated the arms room a little bit further, they did find blood splatter in certain areas. But you're telling me nobody noticed anything out of the ordinary?
I guess it depends on how many people are going in and out, how closely they're looking.
But, like, bleach is very much noticeable, though. And it's one thing to walk into a room and, like, smell slight bleach, but in high quantities that you would need to get rid of blood. And then like security cameras. I know there's not any security cameras in the actual arms room, but there's got to be security cameras somewhere on that post. There's got to be. It's a military installation. They may not have them in companies, but there's got to be security cameras somewhere on that post. And it's just like, what happened to the murder weapon? What happened to the murder weapon? Is it still in base? Is it in Robinson's car? Like, whatever happened to the murder weapon? Like, that's...
Probably thrown in the river, honestly.
Well, yeah, true. But, like, these are things, and it's like, all we have is based off of Cecily's confession. We don't have anything from Aaron, because Aaron killed himself before we could actually get anything from him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm sitting here, and I'm just like...
There's something that just doesn't add up.
Yeah. It doesn't. I wholeheartedly believe that, yes, he may have dismembered her, but I don't believe he actually killed her. I believe he was a fall guy. I believe there was somebody else there that they're protecting. He just wasn't important enough to protect, and they needed a fall guy. And it's sad, because a lot of people think it, including her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, basically, what's happening now is Cecily's going through a murder trial, essentially, but she's not actually going to be charged for the murder. Like, she's not going to be charged for the murder. I think she's getting charged for, like, helping clean it up, essentially, like dismembering of a body and tampering with evidence. So she's gonna serve time in prison, but she's probably not gonna get life in prison.
Probably not, but at the same time, there's military implications. There's a lot of different things.
The thing is that she's completely free of any military implications, though. She is not military. She is civilian.
No, but Vanessa, right? Vanessa?
Yeah, Vanessa was military, however, but because Cecily did not,
there are huge implications of civilians doing anything to something that belongs to the military.
It would be double jeopardy. So they have to choose whether or not they want the civilian world to prosecute her or the military to prosecute her. And right now it's the civilian world prosecuting her.
Sure.
You cannot have both the military and the civilian world prosecute you for something. So the military is not going to do anything to her. Mm. They already got their guy. Supposedly, yeah. So there's a lot to unpack with this case, and seeing Myra's Twitter updates and stuff, and just seeing like all of Vanessa's friends like just share memories about her. It's really sad that like this happened, because it shouldn't have.
Right.
So sadly, LaVena and Vanessa's stories are not the only stories that are out there. In 2020 alone, there were 8 mysterious deaths surrounding Fort Hood, including a soldier who is considered AWOL, who was found buried months after the fact. And then the Army still hasn't investigated, and then it took him like almost 3 months after they found him buried in a shallow grave to be like, oh yeah, by the way, he's not AWOL. Here's the money for his funeral to his family.
Gross.
And they still haven't tried to investigate it. And if they are, they're not doing anything with it. And that's like his and Vanessa's cases are like, I'm just sitting here looking at him going, are you serious right now? So next week, we will continue the discussion about the military covering up murders in its ranks, with Amber hosting 2 other cases.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesday.